Hey everyone, it's James Frederick. Welcome to State of the Art. So I'm coming to you from my new private studio space in Provincetown. And if you're familiar with me, I've been an artist working here for a dozen or so years. And for the last 11 years, I have had a studio which was open to the public in Whalers Wharf. And I chose to leave that space so that I would have a little more free time and be able to explore some different things. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about that journey before we begin, and I take you through some of these new pieces. So what a job it was to get out of that space. I mean, a Herculean effort for the most part. I was surprised how much I accumulated over the years, and and it was very bittersweet too, because there are a lot of memories in that space. As I was leading towards the time to leave the space, I was actually recording my thoughts, and I recorded a video throughout the whole process, but I recorded a video the last day when I was going to turn the keys over. And for all of you who know that space and know what it meant, I thought I would share this little snippet of what that was like. I just wanted to be in here one last time to think about what this space has meant for me, and it's bittersweet. Yeah, I created a lot of work in here. A lot of amazing art. I've had a lot of amazing conversations with people. I set out to kind of control my own destiny of how my art would be hung and the environment that it was in. And I got instead like gifts like that I never expected. The confidence as an artist, the reinforcement from the public, and all of these conversations with people about art and expression and fearlessness, if you will. And here's to a great run. I'm so grateful, and thank you. So then after leaving the studio, we subsequently had 2 snowstorms here in Cape Cod that were pretty severe. One of them, a blizzard that left us without power for 4 days. And then I took a trip, and on the trip we had a cyclone. So it was just mayhem. We also experienced a very sad loss. And so, the spring was me kind of getting my bearings, the fact that I didn't have that gallery open anymore, and, what was going to be my focus. So I waded through that. I spent a few weeks just painting, and the beauty of having a smaller studio space is that you really kind of make room for what you want and what you need, and the rest kind of gets shoved away. And I have to say that it worked out pretty well. Like first few weeks, I just spent like painting, drawing, using materials I don't normally use, and just experimenting. I did happen to get to go to an art store that was fantastic while I was in New York, and I bought a lot of new things that I've experimented with, and one of which is some oil sticks, and they're permanent oil sticks because the oil is set in wax. So I've used that on a few of these. I'll point that out when I get to it. But the goal for me was to really find that happy place that I used to live in with my painting, where it was between abstract and representational. It felt like over the years that my abstract work became like very abstracted and almost non-objective, and then the realism or the representational work became like really representational and really tight, is what I call it, really more defined, and which were beautiful. I love working on all of that, and I loved knowing that I have that range. But I was really craving to get back to that spot where I was like in between. And so the goal was to loosen up. And that's what that exercises of like just painting and not caring how it turned out, just doing it was really helpful. And, I started painting with a lot more kind of like lines that were present in the work. And I started like scratching through things. I mean, there's a lot of these panels around that were just for experiment. And I loved that. I wouldn't have had time to do that had I still been working in that larger space and knowing I was going into a really busy season. So where I landed was to paint with more of a limited palette, which is a bit of a challenge, but I think I liked that constraint and I could learn a lot from it. I could be a lot more dependent on the way I mix paint. And then I also decided not to paint from any reference material. So all the pieces that you see are pieces that I just conjured up based on a memory or a place or a feeling. And some of them are a little more representational or referential, I would say, and some of them aren't. But I think that's the fun of it. And the other thing I'd like to say is that you'll see that I wasn't really careful. It speaks to that looseness, but it also speaks to the authenticity of it actually being handmade, or should I say human-made. There's a lot of angst out there about AI and we're losing a human touch. And I feel like for me, the pendulum has swung more the other way, where I don't want things to look so perfect. I want it to feel like it was made by a human, and there might be something I didn't mean to paint and I painted over it, and I felt like nothing was really sacred in any of these pieces. And when I stepped back to look at them and wanted to adjust things, I just did it, and that was a lot of freedom for me. So I love that. And I'm going to take you through, I have like 10 pieces, so I'm going to take you through a few at a time, and like I always do with the camera, so that you can just see the piece and you don't have to look at me anymore. And then at the end, I'll just wrap up and let you know where you can find these pieces. Okay, so the first piece I call Joyride, and it's 16 by 16 on canvas. And you can see that it is, very loose. So this is, I've been spending a lot of time on my bike now that I'm not having to be in the gallery that's open to the public every day. And so I'm often on these trails that go through the dunes. And so this is me just conjuring up the memory of that. And you can see that it's not, very detailed. There's a lot of places where I painted over things and changed things, and whether it was realistic or not, maybe add some lights to kind of contrast where you might not expect them. So anyway, this piece is called Joyride, and this is a much larger piece here. It's 30 by 30, and I call this one Serene Sojourn, and it's really me just thinking of like one of my favorite spots here in Provincetown is where the breakwater crosses to Wood End. And you can see that there's a lot of like fluid, energetic brushstrokes that I used in this piece. And I love the complementary palette of the oranges, grays, and blues. And I wasn't real concerned about making it like perfect, because it felt like, you know, if you're familiar with this space, that this is all that you need to conjure it. So, yep, so that piece is called Serene Sojourn. And this little piece, this is a view that I've always loved. We do fires at Herring Cove Beach. And this piece is called Beyond Land. And it's kind of the sense of Race Point being that last little piece of land and, you know, what's beyond it. And it's kind of a metaphor for me too when you think about beyond the studio. So this was fun to paint, and you can see very loose. You can see some of the oil stick incorporated here that I mentioned. But I love how this, like, look at this. You can see that I've changed it. I've painted over things. I love that it's just not taking itself too seriously. So that piece is called Beyond Land. And this piece I call Carried Away, and it's 20 by 20. And it's a little more abstracted for sure. It's the idea of, you know, being carried away from maybe what we used to know, moving towards something new, just getting like really enveloped in the present. Also the idea of kind of, you know, carried away by the current. So you might see a reference to water here, you know, and I can fight to go upstream, or I can, you know, float. This also, some people have said, looks like it references dunes, but it's called Carried Away. And this one is also 20 by 20, and it's called From This Angle. And this one also includes some of the oil stick that I've been using. And you can see it coming to life just to add a little punch of orange there. But this piece is, again, of that breakwater, which I find so much calmness from. You know, twice a day, the tide goes in, the tide goes out, and it pushes through this breakwater to protect a marshland. And the idea of like having a perspective was really important to me in this piece. And, you know, from this angle, it just talks about maybe the perspective that I can have on things now that I have moved beyond that space. So I did some things here that you don't normally see from me. I started to gesture a little bit of a pattern happening that's repeated down here in the water. But that's all part of that playfulness. I even scraped some of this paint on with a palette knife. But yeah, I love how this one came out. So it's 20 by 20. And then this piece is called On the Rocks, and it is 16 by 16. And it's really a close-up view of the breakwater, if you will, but not like literal. I mean, it's kind of problematic in the way that some of these stones, or the idea of stones, are stacked and unrealistic, but you get a sense of that space, of that place. And, you know, it's magical to go out there and take a swim off of this jetty in the middle of the summer. Anyway, it's called On the Rocks. And this piece is called Vastness. It's 20 by 20. And this is really just playfully expressing the idea of the dunes. But it's so vast out there if you get out into the dunes. And you can see a lot of really like energetic strokes here. It's that circular action that you saw in another piece coming back to life again. Yeah, so this one's called Vastness. And then finally, these three are kind of companion pieces. They're all 10 by 10. And this one is called Dune. And you can see, again, the looseness, the imperfections. This is my impression of what I call the first landing dune, which is at the far end of Bradford Street. If you look out, there's a big dune right there in the moors. This is called Glimpse, and this is really from my bike rides, and when you kind of come through a part of the woods where you get a glimpse of something beyond. So this one's called Glimpse. And then this one I call Pond. And it's, again, the clearing as you kind of see through beech forest and you kind of get to this place where the pond is. So I love these. I love how they work as a series as well. So that is state of the art. This is the state of my art. And I love where I'm going. So I'm happy that you were able to continue to follow along on this journey of mine. And if you want more information about any of these pieces, just right here in the description, there should be a link and you can get more info about any of these. Anyway, I'm happy that you were able to join me. This journey is just going to continue to evolve, and I'll do these periodic YouTubes. You can always check me out on my social media channels. And then my website, which is being redone, is actually going to be another place where you can reach out to me. And you can do that now too. But yeah, I'm excited about the new website. And when that happens, I will let you know. Thanks.